Then I start. Good evening and welcome to another edition of Tolland County Economy, the new public access cable TV show on your Connecticut station, the Community Voice Channel, for news and information on how our economy works here in Tolland County. You know, a funny story as I start this segment, I had a client from Boston visit me recently, and he came to our offices in Vernon and he asked me, "Drew, why would you start your business in the middle of nowhere?" And I sort of chuckled because a lot of people, when they drive down I-84 or up I-84, all they see are the trees off the highway. But I told him there is an awful lot of life in these trees. And sure enough, Tolland County is home to 143,000 people, and there are 38,000 jobs within Tolland County. And to put that in perspective, you could fill the new UConn football stadium in East Hartford with all the people who work in Tolland County. There are over 3,000 employers within the county. So certainly there is a lot of activity here in these woods, and with me to talk about some of that activity tonight is a friend of mine, Mike Casieri, who is the owner of Dynamark Security in Tolland. Mike, thank you very much for joining me on the show today.
My pleasure.
If you could explain, how on earth did a Massachusetts boy from Brockton end up in Tolland County?
Well, it was kind of a success story. I went to Bentley College and then took a position at Westinghouse Supply in Boston as a credit assistant or assistant credit manager, and then was promoted and transferred to Hartford, my first big promotion.
Okay.
So we moved the family here, and we looked around, and Ellington is where we chose to buy a home. And then, unfortunately, after a few years, they decided it was economic not to run the district out of East Hartford and eliminated it.
Okay.
But rather than move the family from Ellington, which we really fell in love with, my wife and I are both from the greater Boston area, we chose to look for another job and stay and keep my family here in Ellington.
So it was the quality of life here that attracted you, and the convenience to your first job in the Hartford area, which was right down I-84 in East Hartford. So from there you started working for a company in Waterbury, is that correct?
Yeah, I took it. It was the nice part as we do when we're moving along in a career, we try to do a little bit of resume dressing, if you will. And it was the first opportunity to be a corporate credit manager.
Okay.
And it's a $60 million chemical company. But it was an opportunity to be a corporate credit manager for the whole country.
Right.
And I seized it. I ended up staying there for about 10 years.
Okay. So to put things in perspective for those of you who are watching, can you imagine living in Tolland County, and any of you who know the drive from Tolland County to Waterbury, there's no good way to get there. Whether you take 84 or when you commuted, there was no 691 connector.
That's true.
And so how long did it take you to commute each way?
Well, I'm an early riser, so I used to leave early and get through Hartford before the traffic started.
Wow.
And then I would hang around and wait for the traffic to go by. But again, I chose to do that so that my family could live in the environment I wanted my family to be in.
It was the quality of living, and you were willing to pay the price commuting between Ellington and Waterbury for 10 years through winter, spring, fall, summer, all kinds of weather, all kinds of traffic.
Interjecting, though, if you look at we came from Brockton, which is a pretty tough town then, tougher now. But when my daughter dated a young man and married him from Cambridge, we went into Ellington to the berry patch to pick up berries on a Sunday. And he saw that was pretty interesting, you know, but what he couldn't understand is where the people were, because the berries were there, the money was there, and why was the money still there? And in fact, sometimes I was concerned that my kids, Susan, Mike, and Tina, were being brought up in a sheltered atmosphere.
Right.
But I thought I would err to that side. They would at least have an opportunity to see what a real community was like before they went into the world.
Right.
And of course, Susan's in Baltimore, Mike's in Brooklyn. So, but they had their grassroots in the foundation of their value systems, and so rooted in a good community.
It's a great place to raise a family. And you were climbing the ladder of success in the executive suite, so to speak. And then, like so many people, you had something happen to you. Here are some words that describe some of what may have happened to you. Downsized, right-sized, fired, eliminated, laid off, demoted, canned, outsourced, shown the door, dismissed, cashiered, bounced, released, freed, ousted, deselected, Staff reduction, given a new opportunity. Demoted, bright-sized, rift, busted, reorganized, dumped, terminated, sacked, on the street, axed, discharged, dropped, let go, liberated, expelled, reduced in rank, reality tested in a different career path, or in a management attrition program. So what that means is you went through really a gut-wrenching period in your life where you were climbing the ladder of success, and then something happened to you that you never expected, and you had to go to plan B, correct? Could you explain what happened?
Well, that's true. I did get to a point, and it was virtually like that. One of my last years at McDermott, I was director of materials, and part of the director of materials management was purchasing. And chemical company would send their corporate aircraft to pick me up at Bradley, their Gulfstream, and fly me off. It wasn't too long ago that my car went and I was driving a pickup truck. But I guess it became the same thing. I met with my wife and the family. The kids weren't that old, but still. And I said, geez, you know, all the big jobs are in Virginia and North Carolina. And I was really just on the edge of being a VP, so that's where the opportunities were. And I said, geez, Dad, we really don't want to move. So I took it to prayer, and the answer came up in a newspaper article to look into a franchise opportunity for owning an alarm business. And
so it was a little article in the Hartford Courant?
Yep.
So you should read your Hartford Courant and your Journal Inquirer and your local Rockville Reminder and all the newspapers and magazines and the media out there. You never know.
It's true. I took it, and I said, gee, I took a look at it. This may not sound politically correct, but I always thought every red-blooded American man, anyway, there's two things they'd like to do. One is play middle linebacker for the Giants, and the other one's own an own business.
Right.
Anyway, I guess I'm not going to play for the Giants. So, but I did thought this would be kind of nice to have the independence and having your own business. But I really didn't know what I was in for.
Right. So you transitioned from being an executive in purchasing and finance and
actually, it was we were
materials.
in charge. Yeah, I got to a point where the only people who worked for me were salaried. It was corporate purchasing, corporate inventory control, traffic, and warehousing.
Right. So you transitioned from that to being a micro business, a brand new small business in Ellington. You went from the suit and tie to the contractor's gear.
Yep.
You went from the Learjet to a pickup truck. And how did your family cope with that transition?
I'm not exactly sure, but I know that when I look back, it really was great. Those lean years, the Christmases were kind of lean. There wasn't a heck of a lot under the Christmas tree, but they all helped out one way or another in the business.
Right.
And I think they learned that there was a direct correlation between effort and success, that you had to go ahead and, I mean, they saw Dad go out every day, and they didn't know what he was doing. They knew he was out working. Right. And they could see over a period of years how the business came around.
Right.
So they experienced that with me.
Right. So you came together as a team, and perhaps the kids didn't have some of the financial resources that they had been used to, but they learned through that experience that you don't need necessarily a lot of more money to live a good life. Now, why, when you started your business, did you go the franchise route?
Well, if you look in the textbooks, and it actually is true, if I had worked for one of the larger alarm companies and developed some expertise in the licensing, then I could break off on my own because I knew what I was doing. But being a novice, if you need to get over the barrier of entry into a market, then the franchise is the way you go, because you have the learning and the backing, the advertising, and the expertise.
Right. Okay.
So more or less, I would call it the corporate company training wheels, if you will.
Great.
So if you're going to break into a new business, I mean, if I was going to break into any kind of new business, you would have to look at the franchise. You know, you do have to pay the franchise fees, but you have their support.
Right. So in other words, your advice for some viewers who may be thinking about becoming entrepreneurs, if you're thinking about a field that you have no experience in, then a franchise's value even is enhanced by that, because it takes out some of the sting and the mistakes and the learning curve. But if you're in an industry that you already know, maybe the value of a franchise might not be as great. For example, when I started my business in 1988, a few years after you did, I went from doing what I did for Company A to doing what I do for Company B, my business.
Yep.
I did the same thing, just in a different place, working for myself rather than someone else. So I didn't really need the training wheels of a franchise because I already knew what I was doing. It was a smooth transition in that sense. How many people do you employ?
There's 4 of us totally. Two, my wife and I partners, and then I have two trucks and 2 men.
Okay, and my wife works in the business with me. So, how does that work? Do you get along?
Oh, there was
well?
a period of transition. Let me tell you.
Another transition.
Because virtually, I like to believe we're married in '66. We'll come up to our 40th. But I'm really working for the boss, if you will, or the boss is working for me. So, but it's been great. But it is a period of transition, and she was one of the last and few of the stay-at-home moms, so she didn't have any career per se, and God bless her and the kids. So certainly was blessed by it. Right. But sharp lady, and she essentially, to a great extent, it's nice to have someone that you either hire or have to your weakness. And I'm not a good detail person, and this lady's exceptional. So she's there to pick up my mistakes and help me out. If Ellen is like my wife Dawn, there is something to women's intuition, isn't there? Oh yeah.
They can sense things going on that you and I are oblivious to, in terms of people and situations. So it really is nice having a spouse in the business with you to cover your back. Someone might ask, well, gee, Mike, you've had an alarm business in Tolland County for now 20 years?
Right, this is my 20th year.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Wow, that's quite a milestone. Someone might ask, well, if your business has been growing and doing well, why would people be buying more alarm systems? Doesn't that imply that maybe they're afraid of getting burglarized and crime? Oh, what is the crime situation in Tolland County from your years of experience doing what you do?
That's a great question, because it does kind of propose that question quickly. But not only my own experience, but my surrogate son and my both son-in-laws are police officers.
Oh,
one
wow.
of them, Scott, is a resident trooper here in Mansfield. But Tolland County is absolutely not a high crime area. That's it. It's just not a high crime area.
Well, that's nice to hear. Yeah.
The business that I have actually grew up around me. It started small, but it grew up. But it grew along with the economic growth of the Tolland County. The new homes has produced some business. People coming in from other towns and people moving. Say, my next house, I'd like to have an alarm. Okay,
or they may have moved from a higher crime area and
That's
bought
true.
a house here and figured, well, if I had an alarm there, I better have one here.
They develop a certain, it isn't the fear, is the confidence.
Right.
They always felt comfortable having that alarm where they were, and feel uncomfortable not having it coming into this area.
Right.
But the crime virtually comes from the cities. They just come into our neighborhoods during the day when we're at work. That's the high crime area. And
so, in other words, Tolland County is blessed by having I-84 cutting right through the middle, so we can get to Boston, we can get to New York, we can get to Bradley Airport and Hartford, etc. But the downside is that gives criminals more easy access to get off the highway and do their crime and then get on the highway and escape.
Yeah, and it's a double-edged sword. And we come out here because we like to have the zoning laws with these nice, spacious lots.
Right.
So we have a little bit of privacy.
Right.
Well, that privacy also invites. But unfortunately, or fortunately, I have 2 daughters. Both have a career, and God bless them. But unfortunately, or fortunately, women are working. The kids are at daycare, and the house is empty.
Okay.
And then the older people, the older generation, and I'm getting there now, but most of the people aren't sitting on a front porch drying up. They're out traveling.
Right.
They like to visit their grandkids and have trips, the bus trips.
Sure.
Maybe a senior citizen group out of one of these towns is having a bus trip.
Okay.
So their home is empty too. So the empty home during the day is really, it's interesting. It's such, though, that if you owned a liquor store or a drugstore, there's a higher chance that your house will be broken in during the day than your liquor store at night.
Wow, that's interesting.
The statistics
it sort of goes against the stereotypes.
Well, people know they have an alarm at a liquor store, but homes are usually pretty well protected.
And I can see your point about confidence factors, because technology has really improved in these 20 years with all kinds of technology. It really does give you more protection. It's funny, my wife and I love James Bond movies. And you know, with 007 sleuthing around, but we always chuckle because if you watch the original 007 movies from the 60s and 70s, he could never get away with most of the stuff that he did with today's alarm systems.
That's true.
Motion detectors and all kinds of things. I mean, he'd be caught the first 10 seconds he tried to do something.
There's another side of that coin, and I'm dating myself, that the original Dick Tracy, where he talked into his watch. Well, people are talking into their watches nowadays. So, anyway.
Yep.
Yep.
You mentioned that Tolland County is growing, and you have been sort of a beneficiary of that growth. Not only of residential growth in terms of more homeowners choosing to enjoy the quality of living that we have here in Tolland County, either through buying an existing home or building a new home, but also you mentioned there are a growing number of businesses in Tolland County, in these woods, so to speak. And you have benefited from the entrepreneurial spirit that is alive here in Tolland County. What kinds of small businesses do you see growing up in Tolland County?
It runs the gamut. First of all, daycares are growing. There's a lot of good daycares being built from scratch, and they all need fire alarms. So we have another business there.
Right.
There are other businesses that I've seen, I'm thinking as you ask.
Right.
People like Dan Garvey, the Headliners, had a little shop over there in Wellington. Now he has an incredible business here.
Wasn't he right next to Wellington Pizza?
Yeah, originally? Just a little hole in the wall.
And look at what's happened to Wellington Pizza.
And Wellington Pizza had a little hole in the wall in the biker bar. Anyway, they grew into what they have now, so Jeff Kelly's doing well. NERAC had a building up here in 195, Technology Drive. They virtually doubled the size of their building. They actually built a building just as big as the original behind it, and they're doing quite. So there's a lot of that kind of thing happening. So the fire alarms and burglar alarms, and now some of the surveillance, the camera systems are becoming popular too, because people want to have cameras on their sites.
And it's interesting, getting back to the perception of Tolland County being just woods, and nobody's there, nobody's working there. One of the interesting statistics in Tolland County is the average work site has 13 employees. You know, we have a large employer. Some viewers may recall we had a gentleman from Yukon here on the show previously. We had a gentleman from ECHN here previously. So you have a couple large employers. But for the most part, the average work site in Tolland County is 13 employees. So as you drive down I-84 or drive up I-84, you don't see corporate row like you do in Farmington.
That's true.
Or in Rocky Hill, or in Windsor. But it doesn't mean there's not a lot of life here. It's smaller, isn't it? Generally speaking, if the average work site has 13 jobs, these are not mega corporations.
No, you don't find huge industrial parks, if you will, filled with businesses. So they're set in the community.
Right. So it's more entrepreneurial and small business focused.
And a lot of them, you know, I don't have seen anything come in. I was trying to give you examples of people who are small. Even over in Ellington, TSI Harley, Harry Sr. had this just hole-in-the-wall shop, and then get into the building they are now, and that's doubled. And now they have another building, actually, so they're growing from a small business to a... Right here in the community, the business is growing right where they are.
And so your business has sort of grown organically, if I might use that word, in the sense that you've been in the communities in Tolland County doing what you do now for 20 years. So as these entrepreneurs start their businesses, they may have had an alarm system from you when they first started, and as they grow and they build a new facility or expand a facility, they call you and ask you to help out with the expanded or new facility. And if you do somebody's house, then their kids grow up. And
that's happening.
And their kids ask, who did
like,
your alarm
little
system?
Allison is how old? Oh, my God. Okay, so is she in high school? No, she just graduated from college. And it's like, my goodness.
Okay.
The other thing I should interject is, one thing I knew, the kinds of reasons why I located in Ellington, I'm in Tolland now, but the same Ellington, this whole area, is you have a unique sense of community here that you don't find. And I've been in other communities doing alarm systems here in Connecticut, but there isn't a sense of community there like is in town and county. You can. The reason why my business and I stopped advertising after the first 3 years. It's the kind of environment where you can develop to be a community member. We are a community member. And as a member of that community, people know you and will call you.
Right.
So you can't develop that relationship with the community in larger cities and some of the other cities within Connecticut. But this area is unique to that. So if you have a business of some kind, it's the environment here is just great.
Right. How have you seen technology change your business over the years? You were mentioning off camera that some of the areas you're now into are a little different than the areas you were in 20 years ago. Could you give me an example?
Most of the basic burglar fire alarm, there have been improvements in the quality of the product, but the purpose and the outcome really hasn't changed a lot. But some of the technology has made it better. A lot of it happens to be computer-based now, so now you need a laptop where you didn't before.
Right. So you've had to learn, and your staff has had to learn. There's been a learning curve there.
Kind of learning. That was kind of a humbling situation at the beginning, because my degree is in accounting and finance, and I need to have an electrical license. So I sat there with the 21-year-old kids and took my courses and to get my electrical license to start over. But in the area of cameras, that's changed. A lot of the technology. One of the things technology has done is brought the price down.
Right.
We just put in our first camera system that's internet accessed. So the owner could virtually sit at home on his laptop and call up his workplace.
And monitor the screens.
Its head's been around for a while, but the price has come down, and the ease of entry into that, the complexity has been brought away. Right. It has a lot of other uses. It might be something, this is a perfect example. I haven't pursued it yet, but some of these daycare centers, Drew, how would you like to have mom be at work and call up to see how their kid's doing on her, through the internet?
Sure.
And they would have passcodes and so forth, but still, they could call up and Happy Day daycare, and see little Johnny playing.
Wow.
So that's that kind of stuff where it not only is an opportunity for the parent in the daycare, but the technology has brought out a new kind of business that we didn't have before.
Sure.
So that's kind of an example of how the business has grown to get away from the basic just home alarm system.
Now, I'm sure over these 20 years, you started with a very humble beginning and a huge transition out of the corporate environment. Has it been a continuous growth curve where every year you've had improved sales and profits, or have you had dips, and have you had some rough times? And if so, how have you gotten through those rough times?
No, actually, it's been a pretty comfortable continuous growth. A little bit of dip ahead, but primarily it's grown well. The other part is, I like to believe, at the beginning it was real tough. It was real tough, but I knew that the first 5 years were going to be tough, and the head trick that I learned through one of the seminars was that 80% of the shuttle's fuel is used to break inertia. So I knew I had to work hard.
And I think sometimes people who start their own business are naive about the energy and the fuel it takes to start a business from scratch, and they give up too soon. They abort the launch before it actually gets out into space where it can go into orbit.
You have to be persistent and consistent.
Yeah. How is business today?
Oh, it's great. It's probably as comfortable as I've had it. It's been a good mix. The mix is changing. I have an individual now that's been with me for a few years that knows more about fire alarm systems and electronics than I had before. So and cameras. So I've been able to exploit that particular market a little more than I did in the past.
And as we talk now, as we start to conclude and wrap up the show, what do you see the future of Tolland economy being like?
I guess I can't pretend to be an expert on community development, and nothing's perfect, but generally what I see is a good continuous check and balance on what we bring into our communities as far as bigger businesses and so forth. And I think that the check and balance is showing good steady growth with some intelligence. We don't want to lose, if we can, what we have for an environment.
You know what?
Yet we want to be friendly to bringing in.
Right, and there is a balance there. Because from where I sit, I hear a lot of people saying we don't want Vernon, for example, to turn into just an extension of Manchester with all the retail development. that seems to be a rallying cry in some circles, that they want to preserve that rural dimension of Tolland County that they feel is threatened. Tips for people. Maybe someone there is looking for a job, someone watching this show. Do you have some advice, some simple advice to help people?
Yeah, I tell you, that's something as an employer, if you will, or representing, both now where I have just a small group that I work with, but talking to other employers and having been an opportunity to have over 100 people working for me between Waterbury, Detroit, St. Louis, and Los Angeles, the problems are still true, and that is a good work ethic. My gosh, it's hard to find a person who's going to give you an honest day's work, unfortunately. But that is finding, I think honesty is the single most critical part. Almost anybody can learn a particular job, and the boss, he or her, will spend the time to teach. But finding a good, honest, solid person is in character. So the character, it may not be the answer a lot of people would give, but I guess if there's one thing, a person of good character is critical to an employer.
Character and work ethic. Those are foundational issues, no matter how many college degrees you may have or how technically competent you may be. If you don't have those fundamentals, it's going to hinder your career. And what about advice for people who are thinking about starting their own business? Any little tips as we close?
Just be aware that you have to be prepared to put in the persistence and not give up.
Right. That it's an endurance race. It's a marathon.
It's a full court press.
It's not a sprint. People sometimes sprint and then they run out of gas before they've gotten the company going. Well, great. This has been a real treat, Mike. We've been buddies for a long time, and you know, one thing I think you have a reputation for in the community that I see is a lot of people know you around here, and you have a sparkle in your eye and a smile on your face, and you know, people wrestling with all kinds of issues in the world today. What really keeps you sane through the...
Keeps me grounded?
Yeah.
Well, primarily I'm a follower of Christ.
Okay.
That has been the single most important thing. And I was obviously, you know, that I was a fellow member of Fellowship of Companies for Christ for many years, and so I try to use my business as a platform, an example of following Christ's rules, and what would Jesus do? And I have 2 employees who are not what you would call churchgoers, but they're good, solid people, and they follow the principles greatly. And when they're on the field, I am just proud to know that they represent me well, and knowing that they would do what Jesus would do, and they make decisions in the field. Now, if viewers were interested in learning more about you and what your personal journey has been, I understand you've published a little brochure that tells your story. Yeah, I use it as a mailer. It's pretty simple. And okay, great. Yep, and that's available. If anybody would like, I could send it to them. Great. Well, this wraps up our current edition of Tolland County Economy. I want to thank you very much for joining us this evening. I hope that somehow, some way, what we shared tonight is a help to you and someone you know and love. And if you'd like to get that brochure that Mike has, or learn more about his business, learn more about the show, if you have suggestions for future topics or people to interview, please visit our website at tollandcountyeconomy.com. That's tollandcountyeconomy.com. Or you can call me. I'm a small business owner in town in Vernon. I have a business called Keep in Touch, and you're certainly welcome to keep in touch with me by telephone at 871-6500. That's 871-6500. Remember, Tolland County is blessed with a very high quality of life, and I'm just so happy that we live here and work here, and I hope that you're happy too. The revenue producer too, because the daycare could charge like $10 a month to be able to do that or something. Sure. They could pick up a little. Are you getting the alarm business for the new daycare center right on Route 30 near my office? They have a display of Jesus. I know. I talked to them there, but I didn't get it through there. Shays Electric was supposed to do the work, and they ended up giving me the GC out of Manchester. Yeah. In fact, the guy's going to be there tomorrow, right across from the car wash there. It almost looks like they may have run behind on construction schedule, but they're not a nursery school there, are they? They're just I really don't know. Yeah. If they're daycare, I guess